I have always thought that the scariest thing is what you catch a glimpse of on the side. The shadow that moves in the corner of your eye, or the sound you hear that might be the creaking of the floor, but could be something else. What looks completely normal until you take a closer look. What you believe to be safe and ordinary until you discover that something is wrong. This is Twisted Stories 2, with me, William, and today we are going to hear two stories about when everyday life cracks at the edges, revealing itself to be something much more frightening. This story is called The Smiling Man. Once, I was out very late to watch a football game at a sports bar. When it was time to head home, the subway had stopped running, so I had to walk. It wasn't too bad. I wasn't far from home. However, as I walked down a long hill beneath a bridge, I saw a figure a bit ahead of me. It was a person, someone wearing a large coat with the hood pulled up over their head and drawn down far over their face. The person stood with their back to me, gaze fixed on the road. I felt a bit uneasy and kept an eye on the person, who remained motionless until I was about 40 meters away. I still couldn't see any details except for the large coat. I couldn't determine the person's age or whether it was a woman or a man. All I could see was the hunched back and the slouched shoulders, and then I caught a glimpse of the head hanging down towards the person's chest. Then the person suddenly started walking backward, toward me. The person swayed with their back facing me, slowly, with small, tiny steps. I was quite close now and kept a bit of distance as I passed by. Then, they stopped again, right in the middle of a small step. It was a strange sight. I was on the border between amazed and scared, but as I walked past and glanced over my shoulder, I saw that the person remained standing, completely still. The person didn't move again, as long as I could still see them. On YouTube there is a short film and is called 2 a.m. The Smiling Man. I will share the link in my pinned comment. Check now and come back here. It is based on a story that appeared on Reddit subforum Let's Not Meet. There, the user Blue Title shared a peculiar encounter at night, right in the middle of the street, in the city where they live, and I am here to tell you that story. About 5 years ago, I lived in a larger American city. I've always been a night owl, so often, when my roommate had gone to sleep, I would get bored and go out for a walk to ponder by myself. In that way, I spent 4 years wandering around the city at night, and never once did anything happen that made me fear for my safety. I used to joke with my roommate that even the drug dealers in this city were polite, but that changed in just a few minutes one evening. It was a Wednesday sometime between 1 and 2 in the morning, and I was walking near a park that the police used to patrol, quite far from my apartment. It was a quiet night, unusually serene for a weekday, with very little traffic and almost no other pedestrians. The park, as usual, was almost completely empty. I had just turned down a short side street to take a different route home when I saw him. At the other end of the street, on the same sidewalk as me, I saw the silhouette of a man dancing. The dance was peculiar, not unlike a waltz, but he concluded each dance step by strangely gliding forward. I guess you could say he was dance walking straight toward me. I thought he was probably drunk and walked as close to the street as I could, giving him most of the sidewalk to pass by me. The closer he got, the more I realized the grace with which he moved. He was very tall and lanky, wearing an old suit. As he danced closer and closer, I began to discern his face. His eyes were wide open, and he had his head slightly tilted backward, staring wildly up at the sky. His mouth was twisted into a painfully wide smile that looked like something out of a comic book. After seeing his gaze and smile, I decided to cross the street before he got any closer. I looked away from him and focused on crossing the street. Once I had made it to the other side, I glanced back and abruptly stopped. The man had stopped dancing and stood with one foot in the street, the other on the sidewalk, facing directly towards me. His head was still tilted backward, gaze fixed on the sky, and he still wore the same unsettling smile. This deeply unsettled me. I started walking again, but kept my eyes on the man, who remained motionless. After covering about half a block, I briefly turned forward to check the sidewalk ahead of me. The street was completely empty. Still nervous, I quickly turned back, only to find that he had disappeared. For a brief second, I felt relieved until I noticed him again. He had crossed the street and was now crouched down, leaning forward. It was dark, and there was some distance between us, so I couldn't see him clearly, but I was sure he was facing me. I hadn't looked away from him for more than 10 seconds, so he must have moved quickly. I was so stunned that I just stood there staring at him for a moment, and then he started moving towards me again. He took huge, exaggerated tiptoed steps, as if he were a cartoon character sneaking up on someone, but he also moved very, very quickly. I would like to say that I fled from there, or pulled out pepper spray, or a cell phone or anything really, but I didn't. I just stood there, completely paralyzed as the man crawled towards me, and then he stopped again, about 5 meters from me, with the same smile, with the same gaze towards the sky. When I finally regained control of my voice, I blurted out the first thing that came to my mind. I had meant to say, "What the hell do you want?" with an angry, commanding tone. What came out was a quivering what and some stuttering noises. Whether people can smell fear or not, they can definitely hear it. I heard it in my own voice, which frightened me even more. But he didn't react at all, just stood there, smiling like that. And then after what felt like an eternity, he turned very slowly and began to walk away. Just like that. I didn't want to turn my back on him, just watched him walk away until he was almost out of sight. That's when I realized something. He wasn't moving further away, and he wasn't dancing anymore. I watched in horror as his distant shadow grew larger and larger. He was coming back, and this time he was rushing. I ran too. I ran until I reached the end of the small side street and onto a larger, better lit street with some traffic. When I looked behind me, I didn't see him. For the rest of the way home, I threw glances over my shoulder, always expecting to see his foolish grin, but he was never there. I lived in that city for another 6 months after that night, and never went out for a nighttime walk again. Something in his face has always haunted me. He didn't look drunk or high. He seemed completely and utterly out of his mind, and that is a very, very scary thing to witness. Why is it scary when people behave strangely in public? The line between the slightly different and the frightening is so thin. When people aren't as we expect them to be. When someone is not normal, it's a frightening, horrifying realization. It can almost drive one mad. But an even worse situation is the one in the story called Psycho, written by Matt Dymersky and spread as an internet creepypasta. There, the protagonist is forced to ask themselves, is something wrong with the world, or am I just crazy?
Sunday. I'm not entirely sure why I'm writing this on paper instead of my computer. It probably has to do with the strange things I've noticed lately. It's not that I don't trust my computer. I just need to organize my thoughts. I need to get all the details down somewhere where they are impossible to change, somewhere I know that what I write cannot be deleted or altered. Not that it has happened. Everything just blends together in here, and my foggy memory makes things fuzzy and weird. I'm starting to feel trapped in my little apartment. Maybe that's it. Of course, I had to choose the cheapest apartment, the only one in the basement. The lack of windows makes day and night slide by without much distinction. I haven't been outside for a couple of days, as I've been working so intensely on my programming project. I guess I wanted to get it done. Anyone would feel strange staring at a screen for hours. I get that, but I actually don't think that's the problem. I'm not sure when I first started feeling like something was wrong. I can't even define what exactly is wrong. Maybe it's just that I haven't talked to anyone in a while. That was the first thing that struck me. Everyone I usually chat with while I'm programming has been inactive or simply not logged in. My chat messages to them go unanswered. The last email I received was from a friend saying we could talk when he got back from the store. And that was yesterday. I tried calling him, but the reception is terrible down here. Yeah, that's probably it. I just need to call someone. I'm thinking of going out. Well, that didn't go so well. Right now, I'm sitting here feeling dumber and dumber as the fear fades away. I saw myself in the mirror before I went out, but chose not to shave the 2-day stubble I had. I thought it would just be a short phone call. I did change my shirt though, as it was around lunchtime, and I thought I might run into someone I know. I didn't. I wish I had. I slowly opened my front door. I had an uneasiness in my body that I didn't know where it came from, but dismissed it as natural for someone who hadn't talked to anyone in 2 days. The hallway outside was gray and shabby, even for a basement hall. At one end, there's a heavy metal door leading to the building's boiler room. It was locked, of course. Next to it were 2 old soda machines, from which I bought a soda the day I moved in. It had a 2-year-old expiration date. I don't think anyone in the building even knows those machines are there, and my stingy landlord probably doesn't care to restock them. I gently closed the front door and walked in the other direction, careful not to make noise. Not that I knew why, but it was a bit amusing to follow the strange impulse telling me not to disturb the dull humming of the soda machines. I reached the stairwell and went up to the building's entrance. Through the small square window of the large door, I could see out, and when I approached, I got a shock. The dim city night hung over the street outside, and in the distance, I could see the traffic lights at the nearby intersection flashing yellow. The muted clouds hanging over the rooftops glowed in purple and black reflections of the city lights. Nothing was moving except for some of the trees lining the sidewalk, swaying in the wind. I remember shivering, even though it wasn't that cold. Maybe from the wind. It faintly echoed through the heavy metal door, and I heard it was the kind of wind that only blew at night, constant, cold, and aside from the rhythmic rustling of the dry leaves, completely silent. I decided not to go out. Instead, I fished out my phone and held it up to the small window in the door, checking its reception. The bars on the signal strength meter filled up completely, and I smiled. Time to hear another person's voice, I thought, relieved. It was such a strange thing to be afraid of nothing. I shook my head and chuckled at myself. I pressed the speed dial button for my best friend Amy's phone number and held it to my ear. A ring went through, and then the call dropped. Nothing happened. I listened to the silence for 20 seconds and hung up. Frowning, I checked to make sure I had reception, and there was nothing wrong with it. Just as I was about to call Amy again, the phone started vibrating in my hand, catching me off guard. I answered. "Hello," I said, immediately having to make an effort to dismiss the shock of hearing my own voice for the first time in a few days. I had gotten used to only hearing the sounds of the building, the fan in my computer, and the soda machines outside the door. At first, there was no response, but eventually, a voice was heard.
"Hello? Who is this?"
"John," I answered, confused.
"Oh, sorry, wrong number."
I slowly lowered the phone and leaned against the thick brick wall of the stairwell. It was strange. The number that had called remained in the list of recent calls, but I didn't recognize it. Before I could think more about it, the phone rang again, giving me a new shock. This time, I made sure to check the number before answering, and it was another one I didn't recognize. I brought up the call but just held the phone to my ear without saying anything. Nothing more than the usual background noise for a phone call was heard, until a familiar voice broke the silence. "John?" Amy said. I breathed out. "Hey, it's you," I replied. "Who else?" she said. "Oh, you mean the number? I'm at a party on 7th Street, and my phone just died when you called. This is someone else's phone." "Oh, okay," I said. "Where are you?" she asked. My eyes scanned the dull, whitewashed stone walls and the heavy metal door with its small windows. "I am in my place," I sighed. "Just all cooped up. Didn't realize it was so late." "You should come here," she said, laughing. "Nah, not in the mood to navigate to some strange place in the middle of the night," I said, glancing out the window at the quiet and windy street that I refused to admit was a bit unsettling. "I think I'll continue working or go to bed." "Nonsense," she replied. "I can come pick you up. You live near 7th Street, right?" "How drunk are you?" I asked jokingly. "You know where I live?" "Yeah, of course," she said abruptly. "I guess I could walk there, huh?" "Yeah, if you want to waste half an hour," I said. "Okay," she said, and continued. "Okay, I have to go. Good luck with your work." Once again, I lowered the phone and looked at the number that flashed when the call ended. The buzzing silence settled in my ears once more. The 2 strange phone calls and the eerie street outside intensified my sense of loneliness in the empty stairwell. I've probably watched too many horror movies, but suddenly, I got the idea that something could have been looking in through the door's window, observing me, some kind of terrifying monster moving in dense solitude, waiting for unsuspecting victims isolated from other people. I knew the fear was irrational, but with no one else around to judge me. I jumped up, rushed down the stairs, and through the hallway to my door, slamming it shut behind me as quickly and quietly as possible. As I mentioned, I felt a bit foolish for being scared of nothing in particular, and the fear has already subsided. Writing this down helps a lot. It makes me realize that there is actually nothing wrong. It filters out unfinished thoughts and horrors, leaving only the cold, hard facts. It's late. I received a phone call from someone who dialed the wrong number, and Amy's phone had died, so she called me from another. But there was something odd about our conversation anyway. I know it could be the alcohol she had consumed, but didn't she seem a bit absent? Or was it? Yes, that's it. I didn't realize it until now. As I sit and write this, I knew it would help. She said she was at a party, but it was completely silent in the background. It could, of course, be because she had gone outside to make the call. No, that's not it. I didn't hear the wind. I have to go out and check if it's still windy. Monday, I forgot to finish writing yesterday. I have no idea what I expected to see after rushing up and pressing my nose against the heavy metal door's window. I feel really stupid. The fear from last night feels unclear and illogical now. It will be very nice to go out in the sun. I'll just check my emails, take a shower, shave, and then I can finally get away from here. Wait, I heard something. It was thunder. So much for that sunshine and fresh air plan. I went up the stairs only to be disappointed. Through the small window of the heavy metal door, all I could see was rushing water. Only a dim and murky light penetrated the rain pouring down. But at least I could see that it was day, even if a gray and soaking wet one. I stood there, hoping for a lightning flash to illuminate the dark street, but the downpour was too consistent, and all I could make out were vague and peculiar shapes distorted by the rain squalls. Disappointed, I turned around, but since I didn't want to go back to my room right away, I went up the stairs instead, enthusiastically anticipating the opportunity to see through the rain and perhaps catch a glimpse of another person. I went over to the alcove, and indeed, there was a large and not as thick window. Rain poured down here as well as in front of the window on the outer door, but this window could be opened. I reached out to the lock but hesitated. A strange feeling that I would see something terrible on the other side if I opened the window spread through my body. Since everything has been so strange lately, I devised a plan, and now I'm back in my room to get what is necessary to carry it out. I don't think it will yield any particular fruit, really, but it's boring. It's raining, and I'm still going a bit crazy. I came back here to get my webcam. The cable is not long enough to reach the third floor, so instead, I plan to hide it between the two soda machines at the dark end of the basement corridor, run the cable along the wall and under my door, and tape it with black insulating tape to blend in with the silicone strip marking the sides of the hallway floor. I know how silly this is, but I don't really have anything better to do. Nothing happened. I set up the door between the hall and the stairwell, steeled myself, threw open the heavy metal front door of the house, and ran like mad down the stairs, into my room, and slammed the door shut behind me. Then I sat down and stared at what the webcam saw, namely the hallway outside my door and most of the stairwell. I'm looking right now, but I see nothing interesting. I wish the camera had a different angle so I could see out through the front door. Oh, someone logged in. I had an old, worn-out webcam lying in a wardrobe, which I could use to video chat with my friend. It felt good to see his face, but I couldn't quite explain why I wanted to chat with him. He couldn't talk for very long anyway, and we didn't discuss anything significant, but it feels much better now. My strange fear is almost gone. Everything would have felt great if it weren't for the fact that something felt strange. Even with this conversation, I know I've mentioned before that everything feels strange right now, but he was just so vague in his responses. I can't recall a single specific detail he mentioned. No name, no place, no event. But he asked for my email address so we could stay in touch. And there it is. I just received an email now. I'm about to go out now. The email is from Amy, and she wants to meet up for dinner at our usual place. I love pizza, and I haven't eaten anything other than forgotten leftovers from my half-empty fridge for several days, so this is going to be fantastic. Once again, I feel stupid about how I've behaved these days. I should destroy this diary when I come back. Oh, a new email. Oh God, I almost left the email unread and opened the door. I almost opened the door, but I read the email first. It was from a friend I hadn't heard from in a while, and it was sent to a bunch of email addresses, probably everyone he had in his contacts. It had no subject and read briefly. Look with your own eyes, don't trust them. What the hell does that mean? I was disproportionately shocked by the email, and I've read it over and over again. It's a desperate email sent just like, something happened. It's clearly cut off in the middle, without finishing the email. Any other day, I would have dismissed this as spam from a virus or something, but those words, look with your own eyes. I can't help but notice what I've written in the past few days, reflect on what has happened, and realize that I haven't actually seen anyone with my own eyes in a long time. The conversation over the webcam was so strange, vague, and eerie now that I think about it. Was it eerie? Or does my fear distort the memory of it? My brain is playing with the sequence of events that I've described here, and it points out the fact that no one I've talked to could say anything I hadn't already shared. In that mistyped phone call, I gave out my name, after which Amy received her strange call. My friend asked for my email address, and it was me who first sent him a chat message, and the first email came after our conversation. Oh my God, the phone call with Amy. I said on the phone that I was half an hour from 7th Street. They know I'm nearby. What should I do if they try to find me? Where is everyone else? Why haven't I heard or seen anyone else for several days? No, this is crazy. This is completely insane. I need to calm down. This madness has to stop. I don't know what to believe. I ran around like a madman in the apartment with the phone held up in every corner to see if I could get reception somewhere. Finally, in the top corner between the ceiling and the wall in the tiny bathroom, I got a single bar. I held my phone there and sent a text message to every number in my entire phone book. I didn't want to reveal anything about what I feared, so all I wrote was, "Have you seen anyone with your own eyes lately?" Then I just wanted one answer from anyone. I didn't care about what or if I embarrassed myself. I tried calling a few times, but I couldn't get my head up in the corner long enough, and if I brought the phone down, I lost the signal strength entirely. That's when I remembered the computer and ran over to send chat messages to everyone online. Most were inactive or marked as away from their computers, and no one responded. My messages became more and more desperate, and I started disclosing my location and inviting people on grounds that could barely pass as reasonable. I just didn't care anymore. I just needed to see another human being. I also turned my apartment upside down in the quest for something I might have missed. Some way to contact the outside world without having to go outside the door. I know how crazy and baseless it is, but what if? What if? I just had to be on the safe side. I taped the phone to the ceiling in case. Tuesday. The phone rang, exhausted as I was after yesterday's wild adventure. I must have fallen asleep. I woke up to the phone ringing, rushed into the bathroom, and perched on the toilet so I could talk on the taped-up phone. It was Amy, and I feel so much better now. She was really worried about me and had apparently been trying to reach me ever since our last conversation. Now she's on her way over, and yes, she knows where I live without me telling her. I'm so embarrassed. I'll definitely throw away this diary before anyone sees it. I don't even know why I'm writing in it now. Maybe because it's the only place I've poured out my thoughts on. Oh, I don't even know how long. I look like hell too. I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror, and my eyes are sunken. My stubble is thicker, and I generally don't look healthy. My apartment is in chaos, but I won't clean up. Someone else has to see how I've had it. These past few days have not been normal. I'm not one to imagine things. I know I've been a victim of extreme chance. I must have narrowly missed seeing other people several times, and I happened to go out just when it was night, or when everyone was gone during the day. Everything is perfectly okay. I understand that now. Plus, I found something in the closet last night that has helped a lot. A small TV. I've turned it on now, and it's playing in the background as I write this. TV has always worked as an escape for me, reminding me that there is a world outside these strange stone walls. I'm glad Amy is the only one who responded after last night's manic pestering of everyone I could reach. She's been my best friend for years. She has no idea herself, but I count the day I first met her as one of the few genuinely happy moments in my life. I become filled with joy when I think back to that warm summer day. It seems like a completely different kind of reality than this dark, rainy, and lonely place. It felt like we spent days at that playground, too old to play, just talking to each other without doing anything special. Sometimes I can imagine that feeling again, and it reminds me that this damn hole is not all that exists. Finally, someone is knocking on the door. I thought it was a bit strange that I didn't see her on the camera. I hid between the two vending machines. It probably had to do with its poor placement, like when I couldn't see out the front door. I thought, I should have understood. I should have understood. After knocking on the door, I jokingly called out that I had a camera between the soda machines because I was embarrassed about being dragged this far by my paranoia. She walked over to the camera and looked down at them. I saw her smile and wave on my computer screen, cheerfully but with a strange glance at the camera. I know, it's weird, I said into the microphone on my computer. I've had some strange days. Definitely, she replied. Open the door, John. I hesitated. How could I be completely sure? Wait, just give me a second, I said into the microphone. Tell me something about us. Just something that proves you're you. She gave the camera another strange look. Okay, she said slowly, thinking. We met at a playground even though we were both way too old to be there. I sighed deeply at the feeling of reality returning, and the fear disappeared. God, how silly I had been. Of course it was Amy. That day existed nowhere but in my memory. I had never even mentioned it to anyone, not because it was embarrassing or anything, but because it gave me a nostalgic feeling of holding a secret. If some mysterious force was trying to trick me, as I feared, it couldn't have known about that day in any way. Haha, okay, I'll explain everything, I said. Be right there. I ran to the bathroom to fix my hair as best as I could. I looked like hell, but she would understand. With a grin over how I behaved and how messy my room was, I went to the door, put my hand on the doorknob, and gave chaos one last glance. So ridiculous, I thought. My eyes swept over the half-eaten food on the floor, the overflowing trash can, and the bed I had overturned in the hunt for, well, God knows what. I turned halfway towards the door to open it, but first, my gaze fell on one last thing. The old webcam, the one I used for my strange video chat with that friend. Its dark black figure lay overturned on the desk, with the lens pointing at the point where this diary lay. A terrible feeling of horror crept into me at the realization that if someone could see through that camera, they could have seen what I wrote in it the day before. I asked her to tell me one thing, just one thing about us, and she chose the one I didn't think anyone else knew. But they did. They knew. They have been able to see me all along. I didn't open the door, I screamed. I screamed in wild terror, threw the camera to the floor and stomped on it. The door shook, and someone tugged at the doorknob, but I couldn't hear Amy's voice through it. Was the basement door built to keep out the draft? Was it too thick? Or was Amy not out there? What else could have tried to get in, if it wasn't her? What the hell is out there? I saw her on the computer screen through the camera. I heard her voice, but was it real? How can I know that? She's gone now. I screamed and called for help. I gathered everything I have in the apartment and piled it in front of the door. Friday. I think it's Friday at least. I've destroyed everything electronic. I smashed the computer to pieces. Everything on it can be assumed to have been accessible to others, or worse, altered by them. I'm a programmer. I can do that. All the information I've given out since this started, my name, my email, where I am, I didn't get it back until I gave it out myself. I've gone through it all several times. I've been tossed between terror and wild distrust. Sometimes I'm completely convinced that some kind of supernatural being has decided to make me go outside, outdoors. Like it was in the beginning, in the phone call with Amy when she asked me to open the door and go out. I go through it in my head over and over, from one perspective. I've behaved like a lunatic, and all of this is just the result of a lot of sick coincidences. That I managed to go out at the wrong time, that I never caught sight of another person by pure bad luck, that I got a spam email at exactly the wrong time. But the other perspective is that these sick coincidences are exactly what has kept me safe from whatever is hunting me out there. I can't stop thinking that I never actually opened that window on the 3rd floor. I didn't open the front door until that stupid idea with the hidden camera, but then I still ran quickly into my room and closed it after me. Since then, I haven't opened my own door. Whatever is out there, if there's anything, it didn't show up in the house itself until I opened the front door. Maybe it was somewhere else first, to catch everyone else. And then it waited for me until I revealed my existence by trying to call Amy. It didn't work, but then it called back and asked for my name. I am literally overwhelmed by terror every time I try to put all the pieces of this nightmare together. The email, short and clipped. Was it from someone trying to get my attention about what's happening? A real friend who actually wanted to warn me before it struck? Look with your own eyes, don't trust them. Exactly the things I felt so suspicious about. It could have total control over everything electronic, and through that, influence me to be tricked into going, why can't it come in by itself? It knocked on the door, so it must be able to manifest physically. The door, the image of the doors on the 3rd floor guarding monoliths comes up every time I follow my thoughts backward. If there's some ghostly entity out there trying to lure me out, maybe it can't go through doors. I try to think of all the books I've read and movies I've seen to find a possible explanation. Doors have always been an important focal point in the human imagination, seen as portals or spaces of special significance. Or maybe the door is just too thick. I can't break through any of the doors in this building myself, least of all the thick basement doors. Apart from this, the real question is why it even wants me. If it just wants to kill me, there are plenty of ways to do that, including letting me starve to death. What if it doesn't want to kill me? What if it has prepared a worse fate for me? My God, what do I do to escape this nightmare? And now, there's knocking on the door again. I told the people on the other side of the door that I needed a minute, and that I would come out. I'm writing this to give myself time to figure out what to do. This time at least, I heard their voices, my paranoia. And yes, I admit that I'm paranoid, has led me to consider all the ways their voices could have been faked. It could be speakers out there simulating human voices. Why did it take them 3 days to get here? Amy is evidently out there with 2 police officers and a psychiatrist. Maybe it took them 3 days to figure out what to say to me. That psychiatrist could be quite convincing if I decided to believe that it was all just a big misunderstanding and not something malicious trying to get me to open the door. The psychiatrist's voice sounded experienced, authoritative, yet compassionate. I liked it, and I'm desperate to see someone with my own eyes. He said I had something called cyberpsychosis, and that I had fallen victim to a nationwide epidemic where thousands of people broke down after a sensational email somehow slipped through. I swear he said it slipped through. I think he meant it slipped through the spam filters. But I also strongly suspect it was that supernatural entity that accidentally misspoke and revealed itself. He said I was part of a wave of escalating behavior, and that many others felt the same fear even though we had never communicated with each other. This would explain the strange email I got about seeing things with my own eyes. I didn't receive the original email that triggered the epidemic, but a derivative from one of my friends who also broke down and tried to warn everyone he knew about his peril. That's how the problem spread, according to the psychiatrist. I've been able to spread it myself with my text messages and chat messages to everyone I know. Someone who received those messages might be sitting at home collapsing right now, interpreting it as wildly as I have interpreted the contact attempts that reached me. The psychiatrist said he didn't want to lose another one, that people like me are intelligent, and that's why we get caught up. We're so good at connecting events that we do it even when there is no connection. He said it's so easy to be gripped by paranoia in our hectic world, an ever-changing place where less and less of our interaction happens physically. I have to say, his explanation is brilliant. It clarifies everything in a convenient way. It clarifies everything perfectly, actually. I now have every reason to shake off my nightmarish fear that some creature or entity or monster out there is trying to get me to open the door so it can capture me and subject me to a fate worse than death. It would be foolish. After an explanation as good as that, To stay in here and starve to death? Just to defy a being that has captured everyone else? It would be foolish. After an explanation as good as that, to believe that I'm alone in my safe basement room in an empty world, haunted by some unthinkable demon. It's such a perfect explanation for every weird thing I've noticed or heard, and I have every reason in the world to let go of the fear and go open the door. Which is exactly why I'm not going to do it. How can I be sure? How can I know for sure what's real and what's an illusion? All this damn stuff with their wires and signals coming from invisible sources. They're not real. I can't be sure of them. Signals through a camera, fake video, deceptive phone calls and emails. Even the TV, where it lies broken on the floor. How can I be certain that it's real? It's just signals, waves, light. The door, there's knocking on the door. It's trying to get in. What kind of insane creations is it using to manipulate the door so precisely, making it sound exactly like people are attacking its heavy wood? At least now, finally, I'll get to see it with my own eyes. There's nothing left in here that could mislead me, because I've destroyed everything. It can't deceive my own eyes, can it? Look with your own eyes and don't trust them. Wait, did that desperate email actually try to warn me about trusting my own eyes? Oh my God, what's the difference between a camera and my eyes? They both convert light into electronic signals. The same thing. I must not let myself be deceived. I have to be sure. I have to be sure. Unknown date. I have calmly and quietly asked for paper and pen day in and day out until it finally gave up and let me have it. Not that it makes any difference. What does it think I'm going to do? Poke out my eyes again? The bandages feel like a part of me now. The pain is gone. I guess this is one of my last chances to write legibly since soon. Without sight to control the mistakes, I'll forget what movements are made. This writing is a bit self-aggrandizing, a relic from another time. Unique because I know that everyone else who used to populate the world is now dead or worse. I sit against the padded wall day after day. The entity gives me food and water. It disguises itself as a kind nurse or an arrogant doctor. I think it knows that my hearing has remarkably improved now that I live in darkness. It plays small conversations in the hallway outside the door, just in case I might happen to listen. One of the nurses is apparently expecting a child soon. One of the doctors lost his wife in a car accident. Nothing makes a difference because nothing is true. Nothing can touch me, not like she can. That's the worst, what I can barely handle. The entity comes to me and pretends to be Amy. It does a perfect imitation. It sounds and feels exactly like Amy, and even produces a decent copy of a tear that it lets me feel on its lifelike. When it first dragged me in here, it said all the things I wanted to hear. It said she loved me, that she always had, that she didn't understand why I did this, but that we could still live together if I just stopped insisting that I was being deceived. It wanted, no, it needed me to believe that she was real. I almost fell for it. I really did. I doubted myself until the last moment. But in the end, everything was too perfect, too flawless, and too real. The fake Amy came here every day, and then every week, and then it stopped coming altogether. But I don't think the entity plans to give up. I think its endurance test is just another cunning move. I intend to resist for the rest of my life if I have to. I don't know what happened to the rest of the world, but I know that this entity requires me to be deceived by its lies, and if it requires that, maybe, just maybe, I can be an obstacle to its plans. Perhaps Amy is still alive somewhere out there, unharmed as long as I can keep resisting. I endure letting hope live as I sit rocking back and forth to pass that I will never give up. I will never break down. I am a hero. The doctor read through the paper that the patient had scratched his text on. It was barely legible, written in the jerky handwriting someone gets when they can't see. He wanted to smile at the man's unwavering determination, a reminder of human will to survive. But he knew the patient was completely lost in his delusions. After all, a healthy person would have fallen for that kind of deception a long time ago. The doctor wanted to smile. He wanted to whisper reassuring and encouraging words to the sick man. He wanted to scream, but the nerve threads wound around his head and entering his eyes forced him to do something else. Like a marionette, he once again entered the isolation cell, and told the patient once again that he was wrong and that there was no one trying to deceive him.
You have been listening to Twisted Stories Tube with me, William. I've invested significant effort into creating these podcasts. Kindly assist me by promoting this channel, subscribing, and giving it a thumbs up. Feel free to leave a comment if there's anything specific you'd like to be addressed. Until next time, have a great day.